Hello, everyone.
Hey there, folks.
This is Amanda.
And this is Rita.
And you're listening to
I Don't Know Her,
the podcast about women and some other folks.
That you probably never heard of.
But now you will.
Alrighty.
So you said you had something small to talk about. Do you want to do that first before I get into the deep subject?
Have a freaking stick up my ass about asking people that ask inappropriate questions. Just going to start this off with just this petty little thing.
What do you mean by inappropriate questions?
A coworker of mine asked me if I was pregnant.
Okay, well, that one is on the list of never ask anyone that question.
Don't ever ask somebody that.
Ever.
And
unless you're a personal friend and you were there for their pregnancy announcement.
And I was like, excuse me? And he was like, oh, it's not because I think that you're gaining weight. He was like, it's because your hair is just lately, your hair looks really luscious. Honestly, when you are pregnant, you're on
your
vitamins
nails and your hair.
Your nails and your hair and your skin look really good. I've just been doing a different process. So my hair's been looking fuller. And so I was like, okay. And then a customer came up and I just walked away. I was just I just didn't like it. And then I have a friend who has a gigantic scar on his head. It's probably the size of a small plate. And it runs from the top of his hairline around to maybe the tip of his ear. It looks like an arch. And he had brain surgery because he had a very traumatic accident. And somebody came up to him and was like, tell me about this. He points to his scar.
What?
And he answered and gave a very brief.
I had surgery. How about that?
But he was trying to be nice. So he just said it and, oh, okay. And he's like, yeah. And then this happened, that happened, blah, blah, blah. And person left. And I was like, I'm sorry. That was what I said. I said, does that make you uncomfortable? And he's like, yeah. He goes, when people ask me about it, I relive it. I see snapshots of it.
Okay. This is not a person he knew. This is a stranger.
This was a stranger.
Yeah. I have such a huge problem with that. It is not your business to ask people about, you don't know what that's from. It could be trauma. Mm-hmm. It could be, abuse. You don't know where that scar came from and it's none of your fucking business.
It's none of your business.
If you were a lover and in bed with your lover and you were having an intimate moment, you might be like, hey, whenever you feel comfortable, I'd like to hear the story behind this. Mm-hmm. And that would be about the only time that would be appropriate.
Yeah.
I understand the fascination. As a child, I remember being really interested in why people if they had a scar or something that made their outward appearance look quote unquote different. I would definitely as a child want to know. I was very curious. I always wanted to know. But again, I was a child. Now I'm not. And I have manners.
Exactly. And that's what I told him. I was like, people just don't have any fucking manners anymore. And he's like, well, I understand. He's like, it's really noticeable. Trying to excuse it away. And I was like, it's okay to just be like, yeah, that made me feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think honestly my go-to response would be none of your fucking business.
Yeah.
Because it isn't anybody's business.
Yeah. Or I don't know if you get this too of tell me the story behind your tattoos from complete strangers.
Yeah, and I have definitely gotten that, especially on the owls, because I have those big owl tattoos on my arm. Oh, I love your owls. What's that all about? I like owls.
There you go.
Beginning, end of story.
I have the inside of my arms tattooed, and it's mainly because I'm covering up my scars from when I was a cutter. And so when people are like, tell me the story behind all of this, I'm like, I just like it.
I like bees.
There you go. That's it. You should not comment on someone's physicality unless you're saying, hey, that's a really nice haircut.
Yeah. Hey, where did you get your haircut? I love the way it looks.
Fabulous dress. I love your earrings.
Yeah. I definitely think that we have a tendency to forget all boundaries. But honestly, the people who would go, tell me about this and point to someone's head scar are the same people who'd be like, oh my God, I want to touch your hair.
Yep.
Those are the same people. They are cut from the same cloth. They have no boundaries. So folks, your PSA today is get some boundaries.
Get some boundaries. We've all been there. I know, like, honestly, probably I can't say that I don't remember, but I probably maybe have done something like that before.
I know I did when I was younger.
But just don't do it.
Yeah. I also think there was a lot less of that awareness of like, it's none of your business what other people have done with their body or the way that their body looks.
Yeah.
Like
somebody did just touch my hair too.
What?
Because I was wearing it natural. And they're like, oh, I just love this. And
was it a stranger?
And it was someone I know, but also don't touch me if I didn't ask you to.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it makes it somewhat slightly better when it's someone you know, because they're like, it's like
it's
when
a safe
people are
person.
wearing like like something velvet or satiny, I'm like, I want to touch it. And
like if you did it, I wouldn't care. But this person is not you.
I don't know that I'd ever want to touch your hair. I feel like I know what it feels like.
It feels like hair.
I do know that I have a very dear friend who was probably my first black friend, and I'm positive she does have amazing hair. I'm positive at one point I was like, can I touch your hair? And it'll be a shame I never live down.
Oh.
You know.
Yeah.
It happened.
It happens.
You can grow and move forward. All right. Are you ready for my person?
Yeah,
Speaking
I'm ready
of
for
Hollywood-ish.
Speaking of Hollywood,
not
is that
really
a clue?
Show business, I would say.
Okay.
Do you know who Fanny Brice is?
Nope.
I didn't think so.
Nope.
So my friend who had the eyebrow lift or eyelid lift, I was like, do you think Fanny Brice is too well known? I didn't know who Fanny Brice was, but I was like, maybe that's because I'm a millennial. And she's a little older than me. And she was like, I have no fucking clue who that is.
Mm-hmm.
And then asked her parents, who would have been around kind of during some of her heyday, or at least had been like shortly after. And they were like, I don't know who that is.
Okay.
So that tells me that she's not as well known as she probably should be. She was the original female comedian, star of the stage, radio, and the first woman to star in a sound motion picture.
Oh, yeah. I don't know her at all.
Fania Borach was born on October 29th, 1891, to Jewish immigrants on the Lower East Side of New York City. She was one of 4 children of her parents, Rose and Charles Borach. I believe it's Borach, based on the fact that she was teased for her name as a child, and they would call her Borax.
Oh, or like the soap?
Yeah. Or Borake, because it's ACH. So anyway, I was like, okay, so I think it's Borach based on the Borax comment. Mm-hmm. Her mother, Rose, was a Jewish immigrant from Budapest and came to the United States in 1877. Her father was a French Jew from Alsace, which is the area of France that creates great wine. Rose came from a pretty poor background. That's Fanny's mom. She was real poor, and that meant that for her, the biggest thing she wanted out of her life was to not be poor. So she was definitely looking for a husband who had earning potential. So she was being courted by 2 guys at the same time, Charles and this other guy. And she chose Charles, purely practical decision, because he at the time was making about $80 a week as a bartender. And the other guy was making like $4 a week.
Oh, okay.
So she was like, that one.
Well, I mean, choices.
Yeah.
You got choices, make it.
So from everything that is written in her biography and everything that's written about her mother and some of the stuff Fanny herself has said, it seems like her mom was not a real warm person, that she was pretty cold and she wasn't really affectionate. She seemed kind of judgmental, just in general, not the kind of like warm, fuzzy mom type. Mm-hmm. And her and Fanny just didn't really get along very well. It becomes clear shortly into the marriage that Rose, in fact, chose wrong when it comes to Charlie.
Really?
Instead of being an ambitious moneymaker that she assumed he would eventually be, he turned out to be lazy and eventually an alcoholic and a gambler.
Oh, geez.
It fell to Rose to be the one who provided financially for the family. And this was a pattern of behavior that eventually Fanny would mimic in her own life. Mm-hmm. Fanny discovered her love for performing very early on. When she was 5 years old, the family decided to take a trip to the old country and got on a boat headed for France to meet her paternal grandparents for the first time. And while on the boat, of course, they're poor, so they're like in the whatever dregs at the bottom.
Oh, geez.
And so she discovers the stairway and goes up to the upper deck where all the rich people hang out and lounge. And there was this like wealthy lady hanging out in a deck chair. And so she would like walk over to her and give her like a real sad, pitiful look.
Oh, jeez.
And this lady was like, oh my God, this poor little child, and gave her an orange. And
it's called hustle.
Every day, so Fanny was like, oh my God, if I just like look sad, I'm going to get shit. So she would come back day after day, pester this poor lady. Sad. And so every day this girl would give her an orange, this woman would give her an orange. And so then she was like, I'm going to try this on other people. And she actually got a man to give her, like to buy her an ice cream soda at the little soda counter.
Nice.
So she was like, oh, my face can do things. Rose and Charlie, her parents, they had a number of businesses when Fanny was a child. They had a candy and cigar store at one point, and then they started opening up a whole bunch of saloons. And by they, I mean Rose. And one of the reasons why Rose actually had a number of saloons was that she thought that, like, if she was running one, then Charlie would go run another.
Yeah.
Like, and they would give him, like, he would do something. And since he had a background in bartending, it was like, okay, well, like, I'm starting this business, so you have something to do, and you can earn money for the family. But more often than not, he would hang out in the back and drink and play pinochle with his friends.
I was going to say.
His nickname was Pinochle Charlie.
Oh, no.
Yeah. However, Fanny loved her dad, like, worshipped the ground he walked on. Part of that was because he was not at all like her mom. He was very warm and affectionate and funny and easygoing. Actually, I'm going to pause for a second. I was just talking about this with my wife yesterday, about how, like, it's so easy for dads to be the cool guy, you know, the one everybody, like, the kids want to go to when they're a slouch like this. Mm-hmm. Because then mom does turn into the worst, because this mother has to do all of the heavy lifting and all of the providing.
And also gets
and
exhausted,
all of the disciplinary
angry
shit.
Yep.
It is really easy to be the easygoing, fun-loving one when you don't have to do shit. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I don't like Charlie. And one of the reasons why Fanny, though, was a big fan of her dad was because her dad was a big fan of her. Mm-hmm. And on Sundays, they would often hang out together as a family. The saloons were closed. They would go down to the saloon and, like, make a big meal for themselves and take up the whole space. And Fanny would take that time to sing and dance for them and act out little small plays that she'd written. And Charlie would clap and laugh. And then at the end of her performance, he would give her a dime.
Okay.
Rose was pissed about this all the time. One, because she thought that it was indulgent of this child, which I disagree with. We should always be supportive of our children. And also, she was like, that isn't even your money to give her. That is my money. Yeah.
Poor woman.
Also, everybody in that family, that would be such an awkward situation to be a part of.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if it was because of this discontent and her home life, or because Fanny was just maybe like a born mischievous person.
Well, I from listening to this, it sounds like resentment, because here's this little girl that, I mean, obviously it sounds like her mother had a rough childhood. So was she indulged? No. Was she poor? Yes. Mm-hmm. Did she probably have to work? Yeah. She probably was not a happy little girl who got to dance and sing and get a dime. Yeah,
and I think that was the other thing, is like, you can't make money doing this in real life, so don't do this.
Exactly. And so resenting him because he's a loaf, and then her because she's happy, she's probably just projecting.
I bet there's a whole lot going on there.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, but Fanny became quite a thief.
I can understand that.
I'm not sure if it was discontent at home or just because she liked to make trouble, but she just started thieving.
Oh, I stole so much when I was a kid.
What made you want to steal?
Because I wanted it.
So it seems like that wasn't really her thing. I mean, I think sometimes it was her thing, but she really liked scheming, as she called it.
I'd say first thing I wanted it, and it is kind of a thrill of getting away with something. The first thing I stole, oh man, probably I was like maybe 4 or 5. And then I remember in school, there was some cash tacked up on a board in the office. It was like a carnival was going on the playground. And I went inside to use the bathroom, and the office was empty because all the teachers were outside. And I went to use the bathroom over by and then I wandered into the office and was just looking around. And then somebody had $20 tacked up on a wall. And I was like looking at it, and I was like, oh, carnival's going on. I don't have any money. Here we go.
Yeah.
So I stole it. And then I went out to the fairground, and I was walking with my friends, and I threw it on the ground, and then I quickly picked it up and said, oh, cool, look, I found $20.
You little schemer. You are a schemer. You're going to love Fanny. I'm going to tell you about a couple of her schemes because they're pretty great.
Okay.
One of them was that she had a little brother named Lou, and she would constantly blame him. So she'd be
Oldest trick in the book.
hey Lou, look at that sugar bowl up there. I bet there's some real neat candy in there. And then he would open it up, and then he'd be like, look, money. And she'd be like, oh my God, Lou stole all the money. Another one was that she stole this music box and then sold it to a neighbor, stole it from the neighbor, sold it to another neighbor, stole it from that neighbor, and just kept fucking making money on this music box.
Oh my God.
Here's my favorite one, though. It's the Coney Island scheme. So, Coney Island, like, it's like a carnival type situation.
Yeah.
And lots of folks would go there on the weekends, whatever. So here's what she would do. She would fill a handkerchief with rocks. Okay. And then she would take Lou, because he's a cute little boy.
Yeah.
And she would get on the trolley with her little brother and then accidentally drop the hanky out the window. And then she would just cry real tears. Oh my God, I just lost my fare out the window. And of course, always someone on the trolley would be like, oh, don't worry, little girl, I'll pay your fare. So her and her brother would have their fare paid for by a stranger. Then she'd get to Coney Island, get off the trolley, and she would like do basically a similar thing. She'd get in line and like go to open up her little purse or whatever. She'd be like, oh no, it's not here. I just had it. And then inevitably, she said for whatever reason, fat men really liked to give her money. So they would like buy her cotton candy or pay for her ride. And so that's how they would just have a whole day at Coney Island and not have to pay a damn dime.
Oh my gosh.
Which had to, like, that's her acting.
Yeah.
When she was around 10, this is the funniest part. That Coney Island scheme ended the day that the fat man she approached was a detective.
Oh shit.
There were a couple of times like that. Like one time she had been stealing from this department store and then got the cops called on her. She was like 9. Girl. So when she was around 10, her mother finally was like, get the fuck out of here, Charlie. And she divorced her father, and that meant that Fanny's built-in audience was gone. And I think she resented her mother a little bit for that. So Fanny started doing what any, little ham of a kid would do. She started putting on shows in her attic and charging neighborhood kids to come see her.
Oh my gosh.
They had to pay either a penny or a piece of fruit to get in to see her perform in her attic.
In her attic. A piece of fruit.
She was also terrible at school. She hated school. She didn't want to be in school. She would often play hooky. She was skipping constantly. There would be whole weeks at a time when she would have skipped every day.
Oh my gosh.
When she did attend, she was in trouble a lot because she would like paint her nose red to make people laugh. Or when the teacher wasn't looking, she'd draw like a nasty picture of the teacher on the blackboard.
Gosh.
She was just constantly in trouble. Eventually, Fanny dropped out of school entirely when she was around 14. And this was actually after a series of unlikely events happened. And this is in the summer of 1906. Fanny and a friend of hers decided to go to amateur night at the Keeney's Theater. And amateur nights were this like really great way for aspiring actors and entertainers to get noticed and to win a little money, because it was a competition. So at the end of the night, whoever the audience decided was the best would win the prize for the night. And so Fanny signed up on a whim with her friend, but she had no intention of actually going on stage. She was going to leave. They were like the last on the list. And so she was going to leave before her name got called. But Keeney, I believe it was the actual guy Keeney, whose theater it was, he didn't like going in order. He would just randomly pick people.
Oh, okay.
And so suddenly her and her friend's name got called. Her friend was like, fuck this, I'm out.
Oh.
Fucking bailed. And Fanny was like, But at the time, this is like when orchestras would know every fucking song in the world. And so she like walked to the orchestra and said, okay, I want you to play the song called When You Know You're Not Forgotten by the Girl You Can't Forget. At the time, it was a really popular ballad. At first, the crowd was not loving her performance. One person clearly was from the neighborhood and was like, come on, Fanny, because like they knew that she actually did have some performance chops.
Yeah.
But then the people who didn't know her on the balcony are like heckling her, like, get out of here. But then she started making these really exaggerated gestures, and that started to elicit some laughter, which kind of like loosened her up and started helping her. And if people liked how you were performing, they would throw coins onto the stage.
Okay.
And so like, if you go to a drag show, it's very similar. Like people throw money onto the stage. And there are two kinds of performers. The ones who pick up money while they perform and the ones who wait until the very end. And it was generally like the way that you're supposed to do that is to wait until the end. But of course she doesn't know that. She's 14. It's her first time on stage. So during the middle of the performance, she would like interrupt the song, pick up the thing and be like, thank you kindly. And people fucking cracked up. It was huge laughs. The whole theater thought this was hilarious. And she received a standing ovation and won the top prize of the night, a whopping $10.
Oh.
It was 90 to 06, so I mean, that's a decent amount.
$10, yeah.
From then on, Fanny was hooked. For 6 months, she entered amateur nights all the time, and almost always she won the top prize. This was when she also first started using the Yiddish dialect, like the really like stereotypical Jewish dialect, you know, in New York Jewish dialect. And ethnic comedy at the time was a very popular form of comedy. It was like people loved ethnic comedy, like when Irish people would get up and make fun of Irish people. And this elicited a lot of laughter from the audience because there's like this like little girl basically getting up there doing like a Yiddish mom. And she was bringing home like more than $30 a week from these amateur nights.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
And her mother should appreciate that she's bringing home money.
In fact...
Oh.
Her mom was like,
hey.
Well, all the money went straight to Rose to take care of the house. But Rose was like, you know, if you're making $30 out here, imagine what you'd make in Manhattan.
Oh.
And Fanny really wanted to be in real theater on Broadway and stuff like that. So Rose moved the whole family into Manhattan.
Really?
I was like, okay, that's pretty supportive.
Yeah. Well, I feel like her mother is very black and white, and so she proved herself.
Yep.
So, okay, let's do this then.
You're talented and you can make some money at it. Let's go make more money.
Exactly.
So Fanny got her first professional gig in a bit part of a play called A Millionaire's Revenge, but she was completely untrained, didn't grow up in the theater, and was pretty clumsy. Like, I didn't mention this, but she's almost at her full height at this point when she's 14. And she grows up to be 5'7". The average woman at this time, the tall women were 5'4". So she's very tall for a woman, especially a young girl. And think about when you're 14, you like can't really move your limbs right.
Your body's not catching up with your mind. Yeah.
So she's like gangly and awkward and 5'7".
Yikes.
And at some point, there was an accident on the stage in which she like bumped into somebody and a pie went into the main character. And they were like, you're fired.
Oh, no.
So she went back to amateur nights when she returned to New York, but she soon heard about George M. Cohen. He was a famous vaudeville playwright and director holding auditions for his new show. And so she went down, auditioned, and she got a spot in the Chorus Girls, who were also called Chorines or Chorines. I'm not sure which pronunciation. What she didn't know until rehearsal started was that a big part of her job as a chorus girl was to dance.
Yeah.
And she definitely didn't
She didn't know how to dance. Oh, no.
And once he saw her complete lack of coordination, he fired her.
Oh.
She was heartbroken, but also realistic and determined. So what her and her mom decided to do was find somebody who would teach her how to dance.
Okay.
And they found this woman who was like running a program and was like, I'm going to teach you the whole works. You're going to learn how to dance. You're going to learn how to sing. You're going to learn all of the back, like how to be on stage, like all of the things.
I mean, that seems reasonable to become polished.
The woman wanted $250, which is a lot of fucking money.
Yeah.
And Fanny and Rose talked her down to $35.
That's some real talking to.
Yeah. So Fanny enrolled in the course, but she discovered pretty quickly on that this woman was more of a con artist than an actual teacher.
Shit.
They were putting on like a play, and it's like full of all these like people who have no idea what they're doing, and she's barely giving them any direction. And they're losing money hand over fist at any time they're performing. And so like they're in like Boston or something. And Fanny, along with another young actress and that actress's mom, are like sitting having their coffee in the morning, and Fanny sees, I believe in the reflection of the mirror in the restaurant, that this woman and her lover are sneaking out of the hotel. They were going to strand them there.
Oh my gosh.
But Fanny is a schemer. And so
what did she do?
Showed up to the train station. They got on their train and got their seats, and she was like, oh, that woman up there has our fare covered. So the woman turns around and sees them and is like, oh shit, and did in fact cover all their fare. So she comes back to New York, and she didn't really gain a whole lot from the experience, except that she did start to understand a little bit more about the theater and that kind of thing. But the real introduction into the theater world, if you were a complete amateur and you couldn't afford formal training, was to do burlesque.
Okay.
Now, we think of burlesque as like the campy striptease.
Well, that's what it is now, yeah.
But that's not what burlesque started out. Burlesque specifically was a kind of theater that was intended to make people laugh through caricatures, stereotypes, and mockery of serious subjects. It was basically complete satire. And the perfect place for her to get her sea legs under her. Mm-hmm. She made $15 a week when she was hired to be a chorus girl in Joe Hertig's show, The Transatlantic Burlesquers, in 1907. They would call it the Columbia Wheel. So they would travel around the circuit of vaudeville theaters and stuff like that and do these burlesque shows. She was still pretty gangly and pretty awkward, but she learned a lot from these burlesque shows about how theater works. And she was starting to get an idea also of how to use her very expressive face. She has one of those faces like Jim Carrey. Mm. You know how like Jim Carrey can just make his face do all kinds of shit?
Oh, yeah.
And it can transform into other characters. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what her face was like.
Okay.
And she has these really long limbs. She's very tall for a girl and is super thin. So she's just like kind of like this awkward looking creature. And she started to really learn how to use these things that would otherwise be kind of detriments to her advantage to make people laugh. Mm-hmm. In 1908, she was set to return to Joe Hertig's next show, which was called The Girls from Happy Land, but she decided she no longer wanted to go by her given name, Fanny Borach, because of the borax and the borake and the blah, blah, blah. And also, it was obviously very identifiably Jewish. And there's a steady rise of anti-Semitism happening, which, as we know, culminates later. So she decides to change her name to Fanny Brice. And Brice was the name of like a neighborhood, like a neighbor and she just liked the name. So
Okay.
she was like, hey, do you
Here we
mind? I'm
go.
going to use your name. And so that's what she became. And so that 1908-09 season was the first time that she was known as Fanny Brice. And she also like was in this Girls from Happy Land and managed to go from back row chorus girl because she's so awkward to the front row because she started to get a lot of laughs from people. So he moved her to the front.
Awesome.
And then she became the understudy to the lead. And then when the lead dropped out, she became the principal player.
Oh my gosh. That is
in one season.
freaking fast.
Mm-hmm. And so she got noticed because she was making people laugh right and left. Everybody loved her. So she was noticed by a man named Max Spiegel, and he hired her to be in his next show, which was called College Girls. And when he was like auditioning her, he was like, do you have a special show? So a lot of these were not plays. They would be like sketches. There would be like sketches with all of the people. And then in between, the individual girls would put on their own show.
Like a bit. Yeah.
You know, and they were supposed to come with their own material. And so he's like, you have your own show, right? And she was like, yeah, totally. And he was like, great. There's a show on Thursday night at the Friars Club and I want you to perform. Girl was lying.
Yeah.
She had nothing. And so suddenly she's like, oh my God.
I've so done that. I've so done that. Yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah. And you're like,
well, she had learned she was like, I learned that you say yes when somebody asks if you can do something.
Absolutely.
Because, you know, maybe you'll learn.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was like, fuck, I got to have a performance. So she runs down to this place called, I can't remember the name of it. I didn't write it down, but it was just like this like music place, like where composers and writers and whatever would record stuff. So she goes down there and, it's a music publishing company. That's what it is. She found this young man who had been working on a couple of new songs and he was like, well, these might work for you. This young man was none other than Irving Berlin, and he's extremely famous.
Okay.
Basically, like some of the most famous Broadway songs you've heard of, he wrote. And he's young at the time, just starting out. And he was like, okay, well, I have these 2 songs I've just written. Why don't we give those a shot? And one of them is called Sadie Salome Go Home. And it worked really well for this Yiddish accent that she'd been working on in her bits. And that's how she did it. It was an instant hit as this like really Yiddish stereotype as she's singing this Sadie Salome Go Home. And this became her breakout moment as a comedian. It was written about in all of the reviews, like, if you're going to go see this show, see it for this. Ironically, Fanny wasn't very Jewish. Like, her family didn't really do Jewish things. They certainly weren't Orthodox.
Yeah.
She didn't know more than a few words in Yiddish.
Oh, wow.
But again, ethnic and racial comedy was like the thing at the time. And that just really, and her expressive face and her awkwardness and this Yiddish stuff, it all just worked. People liked it.
Yeah.
She was such a hit with Sadie Salome that the director wanted to sign her to a 2-year contract.
That's a long-ass contract.
Yeah, and she's only like 15 at the time. So technically, she needs her mother's permission.
Oh my gosh, she's still so young.
She's still very young. And so she's supposed to have the permission of her mom. But she was like, oh, you know what? My mom doesn't know how to write.
Girl!
So she signed her contract herself. Don't you love her?
Yes, but did she feel like her mom wouldn't have signed it? Or
I think she
just loves the game.
I think she just wanted to be independent.
Yeah.
And it would not feel like hers if her mom had signed it.
Okay.
Right around this time, she's a little bit older. She's 17.
Okay.
She's almost 18 when she meets a man named Frank White. He was a barber. She said he smelled good.
Damn colognes.
And he took a liking to her and he started following the show. So he would follow from Boston to Chicago to New York.
Stalker?
Yeah, I don't love him. And the whole time he's like asking her out and she never turned down a free meal. So she would go out to dinner with him.
Oh my God.
So it's on like the fourth or fifth dinner date that he's like, will you marry me?
Oh my God.
And she's not super interested in marrying Frank, but she's also really young and naive and doesn't really know how to say no. Remember being like that?
Yeah. Oh no. Did she say yes?
Yeah, he kept at it until she said yes.
Oh God, he wore her down.
But she held him out on one condition. She said, okay, I'll marry you, but we can't consummate the marriage until College Girls is done in June. The show that she's in.
Okay.
Part of it was because she'd heard, because she's a virgin, right? She'd heard that like when you have sex for the first time, you walk bow-legged for 5 days.
Oh, the misinformation.
And so she was like, I don't want to walk bow-legged on stage.
Yeah.
And
probably something her mother told her so that she wouldn't.
Well, I mean, but she's traveling with all these chorus girls. So,
okay.
You know, I think that they had been like, oh my God, when you lose your virginity, you can't walk. You know what I mean?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, because they're all teenagers.
Yeah.
Like almost every girl that
it's
she's
just that
with is her
usual,
age.
Nobody knows what they're talking about.
Especially at this time.
Yeah.
We're talking, this is 1910 or whatever. Fucking nobody knew what they were talking about.
Okay. So
she agrees to marry him. He fucking picks her up and they get married and they have this like after dinner. She'd like tried to bail, but then like her whole cast was coming to this after dinner reception and like felt like she had to do it because of that.
Oh my gosh.
It's like all of the worst reasons that you would ever want to get married. Because I have to. I already said yes. That's like her basic reason. When Fanny told her mom about the marriage, because Rose did not know and was not there.
Oh no.
She fucking lost her mind.
Yeah.
Rose sent Frank White a wire, said, you must come to New York right now, motherfucker, because I need to meet your ass. And he did. He showed up and the whole family fucking hated him, of course.
Yeah.
And Rose was like, you're going to get a fucking annulment. Especially after she found out they hadn't had sex. She was like, we can get you annulled then, because it's not a real marriage. You haven't consummated it.
Yeah.
So we're going to get you an annulment. You're going to get the fuck out of this marriage, and this man will never talk to you again. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. Because one night after a performance, Frank grabbed Fanny by the wrist, said he was going to call the police if she didn't have sex with him.
Oh my gosh.
So that night in a hotel room, the marriage was consummated. And then Frank stuck around for 3 nights before he left, and she never saw him again.
That's it?
That is
it.
18 years old. That's how her life starts out.
Oh my gosh.
It took her a few years before she was able to get divorced because like Rose still wanted to annul it, but by this point she was 18 and they'd had sex.
Yeah.
So there was no grounds for an annulment, so she had to have a divorce.
Why did he just leave?
I don't know. Got what he wanted, I guess.
Okay.
So she didn't have too much time to mourn the end of this marriage or the loss of the innocence that had just happened.
Mm-hmm.
She had caught the eye of the most important and seminal figure in the history of theater, Florence Ziegfeld Jr., who hired her to join the cast of Ziegfeld's Follies in 1910. I've heard of the Follies. Like, even if I didn't really know what they were until I was reading about all of this, I was like, I've heard of the Follies.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So her being hired in 1910 for the Follies is a big deal. On opening night, Fanny performed a song called Lovey Joe. And remember we talked about how it was really fun to, like, everybody loved, you know, racial and ethnic comedy.
Mm-hmm.
So she sang the song with a black accent / dialect.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it was really gross.
Yeah.
It was really popular at the time. In fact, I think that, I can't remember if it was this specific version of the Follies, because the Follies is a year, like every year annual variety show that would tour around. So it's different acts every year with different songs and stuff. So, and in fact, what was funny is that the director didn't want her to do that accent. He wanted her to sing it quote unquote straight. And she's like, but it's a black song. It was supposed to be a black song, but she didn't use black. It was not great. And, and then she proved right because it got a standing ovation. Everybody thought it was great. It was the hit of the show. And that was it. Like it was so good to the audience. They loved it so much that they had her kept doing encores. She did 6 encores.
Oh my gosh.
And when she got off the, she got off the stage, the guy was like, "You owe me a new hat."
Why?
Because he had clapped so hard.
Oh,
that
he busted
his hat. And she looked at him straight in the eye and goes, "You owe me an apology." The rest of the show that year of the Follies wasn't as well received by audiences or critics, but the breakout star was Fanny at age 18. And now she's on her way to become one of the biggest stars in the world. At the end of her second season with the Ziegfeld show, he didn't renew her contract, and she was fucking devastated.
Why? I mean, if she's a huge hit.
It was really kind of hard to read between the lines on that. He later on said he had no idea why she just stopped showing up. But that's not really how things went down.
Yeah.
It just wasn't like that. And also, like, being the one who everybody is coming to see and the critics like, she wanted to get paid more. And he was like, "No, you're still new. I'm not paying you more."
Okay.
So there were just a couple of things happening there. So she was like, "Fine, I won't be in the Follies again. I'm going to go to your rival."
Oh, yes.
So she went over to the Schuberts, who I also had heard of, and she made a lot more money. In fact, her friend was like, "When you walk in there, demand $500. And she was like, "I don't know if I can demand $500. So she said, "I want $450 a week." And he was like, "Good, got it, signed it."
Damn.
$450 a week in 1912.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Lucas, tell me what that is today.
$450 a week in 1912 is $12,238.57 a week in today's dollars, which works out to $636,376 a year.
It's 100 years ago, making $450 a week.
That's crazy.
That's like $2,000 a month.
Yeah.
So she was in this new show called The Whirl of Society, and she played a Jewish maid. It was during the tour of The Whirl of Society that Fanny was introduced to a man that she later said, quote, "Stood then and forever after for everything that had been left out of my life. Manners, good breeding, education, and an extraordinary gift for dreaming." So Fanny went out to dinner with some of the friends of her tour roommate. So, you know, like, she's on tour. Yeah. This girl is her roommate. And she was like hanging out with this guy and this guy's friend. And so wanted Fanny to come along so that, you know, it's kind of like a double date.
Yeah.
And so she'd met him a couple of times, and they went to his hotel room one night for dinner. And the minute she saw him, she was like, "Oh my God." Because in his hotel room, like, everything was gold. He had
holy shit
monogrammed like towels and silk robes, and like, she was like the definition of opulence. She's like, "Yes, please." And he was devastatingly handsome.
Oh, there's that.
So he went by Nick Arnold, but that wasn't his real name. His real name was Jules Wilford Arnstein.
Arnstein?
Yes.
That's unfortunate.
So prior to his relationship with Fanny, Nick had made a name for himself as quite the swindler. Between 1909 and 1912, he had been arrested in London, Paris, and Monte Carlo. When he met Fanny and they started seeing each other, he told her that he was a businessman.
What kind of business?
He was real cagey about that, and she didn't really want to know.
Okay, there you go.
Because she liked him a lot, and she didn't want her bubble burst. And he did eventually tell her about his arrest record, but she was like, "No, it's okay though. It's fine." And he didn't tell her though about his wife.
Oh, snap. Oh,
yeah.
He is married.
He's definitely married.
Oh, no.
Fanny was instantly and unfortunately in love with Nick Arnstein. She couldn't stay away from him. Like, she could, you know when you're like first in love with somebody and like just being away from them for even 2 days feels like
it physically
a
hurts.
lifetime, and it hurts.
Yeah.
So she was supposed to like go on tour with this show and decided to just fucking quit the show because he was going to Europe. So she just was like, showed up and was like, "I'm going to come with you." And he was like, "All right."
Oh my gosh.
And so they went over to England, and, you know, I mean, she just was like following him everywhere. And Rose, like, he ended up moving into their apartment. She still lived with her mom.
What?
And Nick moved into the apartment in 1913.
But I'm sure like mom was okay with it because he was so rich?
No,
or what?
Rose hated him.
Oh my gosh.
She
Poor Rose is just still over here, this seething ball of anger.
Rose looked at him and was like, "That's your father."
Oh.
Yeah.
I see. Oh, shit. Okay.
He's charming, he's handsome, and he's a loser. That's basically how she felt about Nick. She hated him.
And of course that makes her love him more.
Oh, yeah. You know, and he would be, there's a moment at which she like sees how dismissive he is of her mother. He also is like, he loves expensive things. So he moves into the apartment and he's like, this will not do. And then orders all new furniture for their entire apartment. And guess who pays for that?
Did Rose?
Fanny.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
And he would just be like super dismissive of Rose, you know, and he would like roll his eyes at her and stuff. And like Fanny watched him do this stuff and he would, you know, she was like kind of joining in. Like she didn't necessarily disagree with Nick and his assessment of her mother. But she wasn't stupid. She wasn't willing herself to like ask him the questions that she wanted to know the answers to, because hearing it from him, I think, would have like really burst her bubble.
Yeah.
So she hired a private detective to do a little
digging
on him. And of course, she discovers he's married. And Fanny's mother also discovers that he's married.
Oh my gosh.
And she's like, you need to end this. You're living with a married man. This is unacceptable.
Yeah.
But Fanny kind of just like let it go. And even after knowing that he was married, she did not confront him. She just decided to wait.
Wanted to hold on to it.
Yep.
Yep.
I think part of it was like, you know, he'll get around to telling me like when he's comfortable, I think is how she felt about it. In the meantime, despite her messy personal life, the show goes on, right? She's continuing to do her work, and she did another season with the Schuberts, but she was really growing to dislike them. She thought they were kind of underhanded in the way that they did things, and they would like find ways to try to cheat people out of money. She just didn't like it. She thought it was shady. After the second season that she had with them was over, she decided to travel abroad with Nick, and they went over to London, and they went all over England, and she picked up parts in plays in London and Bristol and became like a favorite of English audiences in addition to American audiences. And she was also starting to really like, because she's making quite a bit of money, she can entertain and socialize and do all this fun stuff. So that's what she starts doing. She's really loves to cook and is really quite good at it. So she's having a lot of dinner parties and gatherings at their London apartment. And she also was really starting to develop quite a love of fashion.
Okay.
And she could actually even make clothes too that were pretty great. And she, because of Nick, you know, redoing that apartment, she started to really have a flair for interior decorating as well.
Okay. Just getting the bug of like the nicer things.
And she's making $800 a week.
Yeah, so she can...
$800 a week. It's 1912.
That's a shit ton of money.
$3,200 a month. That's what she's making.
Holy shit.
Right. That's a lot of money. That's more than my wife makes.
It's more than I make.
In 2021. So once she returns to New York after their stint in England, Fanny was in a pretty great position because she was very well paid, highly sought after, and basically could have the pick of the litter of what she wanted. But her personal life takes quite a dramatic turn.
Oh, no.
When Nick's business dealings catch up with him, he was arrested and indicted on a federal wiretapping charge in 1915.
Wiretapping? What's that?
Well, where you like listening on people's phone calls.
Okay. I was wondering if he was involved in some kind of crime.
Oh, for sure. He's a criminal. That's why he got arrested in all over fucking Europe.
Yeah.
Fanny hired the best lawyers for him, which obviously took a lot of money. So it was important that her next season be really successful because she is shelling out a fuck ton of money on his lawyers. And even though he had the best lawyers money could buy, he did end up having to go to prison. He was sentenced to 2 years. At the same time, Fanny has a very fortuitous meeting with an up-and-coming songwriter named Blanche Merrill. She actually had a couple of hits already, so she was fairly established, but this would prove to be a great pairing because Blanche made great songs for women.
Was she the one from Merrill Melodies?
I don't know. Maybe. I didn't read much on Blanche, just got like the basics that she had been pretty popular.
Because that name sounds familiar to me. Okay.
But she and Fanny are working together on some songs, and this would be some of the most popular songs that Fanny does in her whole career. She went in, you know how she'd done that Sadie Salome Go Home, and she'd done that Yiddish character?
Yeah.
That was the thing that really like broke her out. So when she went to Blanche, they started to really hone in on that character and finding music and songs that would really work and pump up that character. So when Fanny went back to the Ziegfeld Follies in 1916,
She went back.
she did these performances with Blanche's songs, and it was the hit of the seasons. The 1916 and 17 seasons are considered basically the best, and a lot of that was due to Fanny. Nick was let out of prison after 14 months and decided to come on tour with Fanny for the 1917 season of
Does
the
his
Follies.
wife wonder where he's at?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, so this is a whole drama that I was trying to keep out, but basically the whole time she's like, you need to get a divorce so we can get married. And he's like, yeah, I definitely do. I don't know why it was so fucking hard to get a divorce, but there are multiple occasions in this book regarding many different people where when they wanted to get a divorce, they had to like in the case of him and his wife Carrie, he had a private detective or whatever caught her with another man, and that's how they could finally get divorced, because you had to have a cause. You couldn't be like, I just don't like her anymore.
I don't want to do this.
Yeah. And if it had been on him, because obviously he's cheating on her with Fanny.
Yeah.
I don't know why that wasn't the cause, but I guess because she wasn't the one petitioning for divorce.
Okay.
I don't know. I just thought it was complicated and weird. He basically was like, yeah, I do want to get divorced. The whole fucking time he's in prison, fucking his wife is visiting him. Fanny has no idea.
Oof.
And it's a whole drama. Like, he very clearly didn't want to divorce his wife, but he also wanted to have Fanny because he's fucking selfish. I hate him.
And she's got money.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, that's why he's with her. I despise him. And he is a loafer. He is just like riding her coattails. Like, he's following her on tour. He gets to do all the cool things without doing any fucking work. Ugh. And once again, she's the hit of the show. But Fanny's feeling really restless. Okay, so she's got some fame and lots of success, getting paid really well, but she's being kind of pigeonholed as the clown. You know, she only plays these like outlandish, crazy characters. And she really wants to be taken seriously. She wants to have a serious career as well.
Okay.
So she really wants to try her hand at dramatic acting. So in 1918, she joins a play called Why Worry? But it was awful and terrible and everyone hated it.
Oh, no.
But she did have something to look forward to because finally Nick got divorced. And they could get married 6 years.
Oh my God, she wants to marry him? No.
6 years into their relationship, they finally get married.
Oh my gosh.
Fanny was soon pregnant with their first child, and she worked up until she was 7 months fucking pregnant on stage.
Oh my gosh.
On August 12th, 1919, Fanny gave birth to their daughter, Frances. By the next month, she was back in rehearsals for the next Ziegfeld show.
Holy crap. That's
She
fast.
took a month off.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Nick the Fuck Up, that's his new name, was at it again. Just a few months later, she came home to find him packing.
Oh.
He's like frantically packing, and he was like, "Have you been followed?"
What's
she was
going
like,
on?
No, and he was like, "I'm innocent." Of what?
Oh my gosh.
And then he handed her 2 checks and he left. And she was like, "What the fuck is going on?" She had no idea what was going on until 5 days later when the police called and said they needed to search her apartment. And apparently Nick had been involved in a crime ring that was swindling money out of New York stock brokerage firms to the tune of $5 million
Oh my gosh.
in 1920.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And so he's just gone.
He's on the run.
Yeah.
And it was like so wild. The cops are like, you know where he is? She's like, legit, I don't. Who knows? She might have actually known, but she was like, I don't know where he is. But she would like go to like a friend's apartment when that friend was out of town, and then he would call her there and they would talk on the phone. And like one time she was doing this like at a person's apartment who wasn't there, and the cops showed up and they were like, we followed you. You're on the phone with him. And she was like, no, I'm not.
Oh my gosh.
And so the cops are after him. They cannot find him. He's on the run for 3 fucking months before he finally surrenders to authorities, but not before he was a fucking asshole about it. She posted his $100,000 bond so that he could come home and await trial.
Skirts on that, then she's on the hook for $100,000. Mm-hmm. Shit.
Fanny had to keep the family afloat, and she's fucking paying out
Never
$100,000.
bond out your boyfriends. I did that once. Don't ever do it. Don't bond out your boyfriends.
And she's a working actress and a fucking mother, and so she's like, well, I gotta pay for this whole shit. So she gets on her next tour with the Follies. So she's out touring. Nick is supposed to be at home at their apartment, but she's talking to him daily, and he's often not home. Like, he'll call her, and he's like fucking bouncing around, going wherever he wants. Sometimes he's in Chicago. He's been hanging out in DC a lot with one of his criminal friends, and they've been having parties at a hotel, and there are lots of guests there, most of whom are women. Yeah. So he's a real stand-up guy.
Nope.
Love him. As if things weren't already complicated, Fanny found herself pregnant with their second child. And this is in the middle of like the tour. And Ziegfeld was like, how could you do this? This is so irresponsible. Which I'm like, fuck you. But also, yeah, this isn't a great time.
This is not a great time for that.
It was terrible timing, but they had their second child, a son named William Jules Arnstein, who was born on April 23rd, 1921. 2 weeks later, Nick went to trial, and that same month, she went back to work.
Jeez.
Ziegfeld gave Fanny a new kind of song for her to sing, which is really interesting. So there had been this French song called Mon Homme, and that's My Man, and they had translated it initially into English, like word for word, but it didn't work. And then this songwriter like took it and refurbished it, and Ziegfeld wanted Fanny to sing it. This is a very serious song. It's a ballad. So Fanny came out in like dress rehearsal to sing this in this like giant red wig, black velvet dress, sparkly earrings. And then she sang it kind of comically.
Yeah.
And he was like, you look like a drag queen.
I was just going to say, I was like,
And this is not right for this song.
Yeah.
But it seems to me that one of the reasons why she does comedy is because then it allows her to be distanced from things that are serious. And this song was way too close to what her real life was at the time. And I think that's why she didn't want to sing it like seriously.
Yeah.
But he was like, no, this song needs to be sung seriously. It has to be just the way that the words go. So when she finally did perform the song, she couldn't open her eyes. She sang the song with her eyes closed. She would kind of like hold her arm over her chest and like touch her left arm with her right arm, kind of that like closed thing. And it was basically the exact opposite of what she would normally do. You know, normally she'd have these over the top Yiddish characters, but very animated, very like facial.
Yeah.
In this one, it was just this quiet, understated motion. She didn't even move. She would just stand in one place and sing the song with her eyes closed. The experience was really intimate, and audiences were really moved to see her do this. So I'm going to share some of the lyrics with you, and in a minute, I'm also going to share her singing it so you can get a feel for it.
Yeah.
So here are some of the lyrics. It's cost me a lot, but there's one thing that I've got. It's my man. He's not much for looks, and no hero out of books is my man. 2 or 3 girls has he, that he likes as well as me. But I love him. I don't know why I should. He isn't good. He isn't true. He beats me too. What can I do? Oh, my man, I love him so. He'll never know all my life is just despair, but I don't care when he takes me in his arms.
Oh, geez. Yeah, that's
It's
her to a T.
Close to the bone.
Mm-hmm.
In the words of a critic, her performance, quote, electrified the audience. So I'm going to have a little recording of her singing this song in 1938, which is 17 years after the first performance. But she's performs it almost the same way no matter what. Eyes closed, very intimate. This is on the radio, so you won't see anything.
Okay.
Cost me a lot, but there's one thing that I've got. It's my man. Cold and wet, tired you bet, but all that I soon forget with my man. He's not much for look, and no hero out of book is my man. 2 or 3 girls has he that he likes as well as me, but I love him. Don't know why I should. He isn't good. He isn't true. He beats me too. What can I do? Oh my God, I love him so.
Very grandiose, like rich and thick and...
That, like, the sadness of that,
Oh, yeah.
it is palpable. That, just that, like, and also the depth, like, the what can I do?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I just really felt that song.
Yeah.
I could see why it would really touch audiences.
Oh, yeah.
When she walked off the stage after that very first performance of My Man, Ziegfeld handed her a check for $2,500.
Oh, my gosh.
And he said, "You've earned it." After that, her weekly salary was $3,000.
Whoa.
Yeah, she's making $12,000 a month now.
Oh, my gosh.
Fanny financed Nick's trial, and the many, many appeals that followed, remained loyal to him the entire time, even when he was serving time in Leavenworth prison. And throughout this whole time, from 1918 to 1927, she is working her fanny off. She like that.
Ba-dum-bum.
She appeared in The Follies from 1920 to 1923, 4 other Ziegfeld shows, and 2 other productions, including Irving Berlin's Music Box Review. She also recorded and produced several records and performed in a number of vaudeville shows.
Man, she's working.
She's working hard. She had a nose job in 1923. And, like, she has a prominent nose, right? Mm-hmm. And she thought that she needed to, like, tame it down to make it look more, quote-unquote, normal. Mm-hmm. It didn't go well. Also, it was performed in her hotel room with local anesthesia.
No thanks. No thanks.
Nope.
That sounds like an infection.
It was written about in all of the papers, including the New York Times.
That she got a nose job?
Yeah. Like, I actually found the original article about her nose job in the New York Times.
Jeez.
When Dorothy Parker was asked about what she thought of Fanny Brice's nose job, which I think was weird. Again, we're asking other people about somebody's body. It's very strange.
Don't do this.
Dorothy Parker said, Fanny Brice cut off her nose to spite her race.
Ouch. Brutal.
Oh, yikes.
Cringe. Cringe.
Things with Nick were deteriorating.
Well, yeah.
She's finally gotten to the point where she like is no longer like this puppy dog in love with him, and she's mad.
No, she's turning into her mother.
Yeah, she's absolutely turning into her mother. They're fighting constantly. Sometimes they're violent. There were like stories about her lifting up an entire tablecloth and dumping the whole fucking table on him. There was one where she cut him. It gets pretty bad. They're not good. And you know, she was having these like dinner parties all the time. She's basically every night having people over for dinner, and he would get irritated about it. But it was like, I think she just didn't know how to be alone with him. And he would like just go on these long drives. He'd be like, I'm going to go on a drive. And then he would just be gone for hours and hours and hours. Wouldn't come home till like 3 a.m. Sometimes overnight.
Yeah, he's not driving.
So she hired another detective to figure out what he was up to. And of course, his long drives led him to a woman in Manhattan. When she confronted him, Nick was like, I don't want to have this conversation, and left for Chicago because he had a friend there and they're having a business meeting. Business deal.
Sure.
And they open up a casino, yet another illegal business venture. And it will come as no surprise to you that the Chicago police raided Nick's casino, and Fanny finally filed for divorce. Their tumultuous love affair ended in 1927. And after that, Nick all but disappeared, not just from Fanny's life, but also from their children's. 1927 was also the year in which the first motion picture with sound debuted. And it was her friend and sometimes co-star Al Jolson in The Jazz Singer. If you're a film buff, film historian, you know about The Jazz Singer because it was the first film with sound and well known as a blackface film. That was Al Jolson's whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
Warner Brothers approached Fanny, who they saw as the female Jolson, and they wanted her to appear in films. She was pretty reticent about it. She was like, I'm not sure I want to be in front of a camera, but she decided to give a shot. And her first film in which she was had sound meant that she became the first woman to star in a motion picture with sound. Unfortunately, movies were not a great vehicle for Fanny. Fanny Brice was about 36 when she started in film. She's a little old for an actress. And she didn't have the look of a traditional film actress. She did make 6 movies in all, but they were all kind of bombs, and she never felt comfortable. In 1929, Fanny met and married a songwriter named Billy Rose, and Billy Rose idolized Fanny, thought she was the fucking bee's knees, and she became his muse, which was great for both of their careers.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he became just known as Fanny Brice's husband. And I guess he was kind of ugly and short, and it was a very weird pairing. In fact, the first time she met him, she thought he was I think she called him like a smelly weasel. I don't know. Anyway.
Oh, she's not really good at the love life.
She is very much on the rebound, though, from Nick, and is 100% still in love with him. She cries every night over him.
Oh, my gosh.
Every night. But they did have some real affection between them, her and Billy. She didn't love him, though.
Yeah, more like an appreciation. Yeah.
This is what she said. There was never a shade of emotion between us, never a thought or a word of love, but we enjoyed being together. We spoke the same language and loved the same language. We were friends, I thought. Dun, dun, dun. Foreshadowing. They did share the same language. Billy was able to write and produce material for Fanny that helped her career and his explode. He helped hone her character, one of her Yiddish characters, which was Mrs. Cohen, a very nebby Jewish mother. So they would have like Mrs. Cohen at the beach, and she'd be like, where did you get that? What are you doing over there, Billy? And she played really into these stereotypes and caricatures to the audience's great delight. And it was during a show of Billy's called Sweet and Low that Fanny embodied the character that she would become most famous for in her lifetime. Billy helped to create a character called Babykins. And it was based on, like, in their real life when, you know how you do the meow and stuff?
I do.
She would do this baby voice. So, like, if, like, the glass tipped over and the water went everywhere, she would be like, oh, the water went everywhere. And so he was like, let's make this into a real character. And at first she was really reluctant. She was like, I don't want to play a baby on stage.
Oh my gosh, I can relate to. I'm sorry, just how you said the water went everywhere. Just a quick little side note. I was on the sidewalk and I ran into a Lime scooter and I knocked it over and I went, I did it! And I ran away.
I would have loved to have seen that. So Babykins is like this character based on the fact that she does do this baby voice sometimes. And the first time she does it on stage, audiences were like fucking howling. They think it's the most funny thing they've ever seen.
Yeah.
Right? Babykins morphed into Baby Snooks, a character which she then took on the road in the new Follies, and it became the thing everybody wanted to come see was Baby Snooks, which she called Schnooks. And they were being produced by, this is really interesting, so Ziegfeld died, and apparently he had left quite a bit of debt. Oh. And his wife approached the Schuberts, remember the Schuberts were the rivals?
Yeah.
And said, will you produce a new Follies, a Ziegfeld Follies? And so the Schuberts agreed to do that.
Okay.
And so even though it was called the Follies, it was actually produced by the Schuberts. And Fanny agreed to do this because she wanted to help out the wife.
Yeah.
Fanny appeared in a baby doll dress, hair ribbon, frilly ankle socks, and Mary Jane's. Almost 40-year-old woman on stage and dressed as an unruly and inquisitive toddler. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Very funny, right? Even better, the character was great for the radio.
Oh, yeah.
So the theater industry, because it used to be like that was all anybody had for entertainment. So now we've also got movies, and radio is starting to replace theater because people could like turn on the radio on a Saturday afternoon.
Yeah,
and listen
you didn't
to a
have
show.
to actually go and somewhere and buy a ticket.
And so Baby Snooks became perfect for radio. And this is what I read a fucking terrible biography of Fanny Brice by a man named Herbert Goldman. I cannot recommend it. But I do like this description he wrote about why Snooks was such a successful character. Fanny's baby exhibited the precocious quality that marked Snooks' later career and gave the character its bite and truth. Snooks saw the fallibility and hypocrisy of adults, but as a baby lacked fear and the compassion needed to respect them. Her precocious worldly wisdom and uninhibited selfishness would have been obnoxious in an adolescent or a young adult. In a baby, as portrayed by Fanny, they were innocent, if knowing and hilarious. As Fanny's radio career began to take off, her marriage with Billy Rose faltered. He was becoming famous in his own right, and he was producing these really large shows, and he was traveling, and he was always gone somewhere. Sometimes he was working with the mob. It was not great.
Whoa.
He was also, like Nick Arnstein, frequently cheating on Fanny. In 1937, Fanny moved to California, and her third marriage ended the following year after he went to the press and aired their fucking dirty laundry. He had fallen in love with another woman who was also married and told the press that he wanted to marry Eleanor. That's how fucking Fanny found out. This is what he said. I want you to get this straight, he told reporters, and make it clear that there are no hard feelings among any of us involved. If I know Fanny Brice, she'll simply say, good luck, kids, and go right ahead and get a divorce. Fanny felt completely betrayed. This is what she said later.
Yeah.
Right up to the morning when I read the news in the newspaper, the news that he wanted a divorce, I thought we were friends. It wasn't what he did that hurt me. More, yes, even more than Nikki. It was the way he did it. Mm-hmm. He didn't call her and be like, hey, I'm in love with Eleanor. I want to marry her.
Yeah, just show her the respect of having a conversation with her.
Going to the fucking press, ugh, gross. Throughout the rest of her life, she spoke about Billy Rose in pretty much the most derogatory way. She called him a no-good, low-down louse and a little son of a bitch. And one time somebody she was talking to was like, whoa. And she was like, oh, I'm sorry. He's not little. The move to California helped her get past what it was going on with Billy. She got to completely start over, and it turned out Fanny really loved living in California. It was a huge departure from the hustle and bustle of New York City. And she started to just sort of like, she was like, I wear slacks.
Well, it's probably like a nice too. Just there's so many bad memories and all of that, and just to go to a different location. It's sunny. It's bright. It's so much more chill than New York.
She started painting.
Nice.
And she was doing a lot of interior decorating, which she had always loved to do. But now she was doing it like on the side for fun, but for like Katharine Hepburn.
Ooh.
You know, she was doing cool stuff. Fanny was also doing really well on the radio. However, it was like her whole career prior to being Baby Snooks just disappeared and she was just Baby Snooks.
Yeah.
Which I don't think she loved because she had been on Broadway for many years and had made a huge indelible mark there. And now everybody was like, oh, Baby Snooks.
Yeah. Well, it's like almost like she's a joke again, which she didn't like.
No, she didn't love that. But she's making $5,000 a week.
Oh, man.
And working.
I'd walk down the street naked for $5,000 a week.
She works 3 days a week.
Nice.
For $5,000. Yeah. And it was a steady job. Snooks became so popular that it expanded from just Snooks and Daddy, which was the other character, a beleaguered man, a father. And the cast expanded until there was like a whole family with like a mother, a grandmother, a baby brother named Robespierre, which I love. Robespierre.
That's a name?
Yeah. It's an old name though.
Okay.
Robespierre is like fucking old. Anyway, so Robespierre, the baby brother. So I'm going to actually play just a little bit of one of the Baby Snooks skits. They're fucking hilarious, honestly. Okay. I love them. They always end with her being spanked, though, which I find really weird.
Do people spank babies? I hope not.
Well, she's like a toddler.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Smack a toddler.
I think everybody wants to smack a toddler. I'm just joking, everyone. Don't kill us.
Don't.
So I'm going to set the scene for what's happening because I'm going to come in a little bit into the skit. So Daddy is trying to get work done and have some peace and quiet, but Snooks has been like interrupting and like moving his legs around, and she's singing. And she's particularly fond of the nursery rhyme London Bridge. London Bridge is falling down, falling down.
Yeah.
So we're cutting in right after he's asked her to be quiet. And so instead of singing loudly, she just sings it quietly. You know, like a toddler.
Yeah.
Oh, stop that singing.
All right. Daddy.
What is it?
Who's London?
London is the name of a city.
Ain't it a man?
No.
Then why is his britches falling down?
It's not britches. It's bridge. London Bridge. Did you hear something?
It's that kid of yours.
Robespierre. He's crying. I'll see what it is.
Yeah! That's all he does is holler. Yeah!
Snooks! What do you think?
What?
You can't imagine what's happened to little Robespierre.
His nose dropped off.
No, he's got a tooth. His first tooth. Come and have a look at him.
Who?
Your little brother.
I ain't got no little brother.
You haven't got a little brother?
No, I divorced him.
I never heard of such nonsense. Snooks, I can't understand why you don't show any affection at all for little Robespierre.
I don't like him.
Well, why not?
He hollers too much.
Well, of course he cries a lot. But that's only his way of letting us know that he wants something.
Why don't he ask for it?
Snooks, you know as well as I do that infants can't talk.
Why?
Because nobody talks until he's at least a year old.
That ain't what you said to Uncle Louis.
What did I say to Uncle Louis?
You said you cursed the day you was born.
That has nothing to do with it.
That's pretty good.
It's pretty funny, right?
Yeah.
There are a couple of them that are really funny. Like Abby and I were laughing pretty good about it.
It reminds me of Lucille Ball.
Yeah. That's what I find interesting. I kind of circle back to that at the end, is that like, we know who Lucille Ball is.
Yeah.
Why don't we know who Fanny Brice is? I find that really interesting. In 1945, unfortunately, Fanny has a massive heart attack. It leaves her hospitalized for a few days in what they called an oxygen tent. And I was like, what the fuck is that?
What?
Medicine used to be real weird. This meant that the Baby Snooks show started off without her that season, but she miraculously she's like a workaholic, returns on the 4th broadcast. And they wrote in her illness as Snooks having amnesia. But Fanny's health continued to decline. She was having like chronic ear infections. She would have low blood counts and had to have liver injections multiple times a week.
Was she a drinker?
I don't think a real bad drinker. Mm-hmm. I don't know what was really wrong with her. She was having also really bad insomnia. People talked about
just
her
worn out.
Yeah, I think something really was going on though. Something else was going on and they just weren't diagnosing it. She had really terrible headaches that would like put her down.
Jeez.
And her insomnia was so bad that like she would call people up in the middle of the night and like hold them hostage for hours.
Jeez.
Because she was just lonely and couldn't sleep. Another issue plaguing her was the advent of television, which was pushing out shows like Baby Snooks from the radio because they were nobody was listening to the radio. They were watching television. Mm-hmm. So they wanted to turn Snooks into a TV show. And so she did try her hand at doing Snooks on television. But at this point, she's 57.
Yeah, it's probably not, it doesn't have the same effect.
Yeah, she saw it and she was like, this is fucking ridiculous. She's a 57-year-old woman in a baby doll dress. And she's so tall. And the man that was playing her dad was like kind of the same height. It just didn't work. It just was weird. And she thought it was weird. And it didn't work for television. So she decided it was about time to retire. She was like, I'm going to write my memoirs. She was thinking about retiring. She had written some notes down. She got a ghostwriter who had been interviewing her and taking notes. And so she decided that the 1950-51 season would be her last as Baby Snooks. And she was really looking forward to hanging out with her grandchildren, her creative hobbies like painting, and writing her book. Unfortunately, that would never come to fruition. Fanny Brice had a severe cerebral hemorrhage on May 24th, 1951.
Oh, whoa.
She was in a coma for 5 days before passing away on May 29th. She was mourned by more than 1,000 people at her funeral. After her death, her memoirs were slated to be released, but after some very contentious issues with the family, the book was pulled. Apparently, they really objected to the fact that, like, even though they openly talked about it, and so did she, they really hated that it included the stuff about her being a thief when she was a child.
Okay.
I don't know. So the book never really made it. Nobody really read it, so on and so forth. But then, in the early 1960s, a play based on Fanny Brice was announced. Funny Girl, starring 21-year-old Barbra Streisand, debuted in March of 1964.
What?
Funny Girl is Fanny Brice.
Are you serious?
Isn't that fucking wild?
That is.
I had no idea that was based on a real person.
No.
Yeah, and like the whole love story is her and Nick.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I'm like freaking mind blown.
So Barbra Streisand is 21. It's her like breakout role of her career. It like catapulted her to stardom, and then she reprised the role in the film version and won the Academy Award for Best Actress in 1969, playing Fanny Brice.
Crazy.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah, that is.
If you tuned in to stay for this whole thing, this is the moment when your jaw drops, I think. Fanny Brice was a tenacious survivor in a business that does not love women. Comedy is the hardest area for women to be taken seriously, and when they are, they rarely receive the awards and accommodations that men do. Fanny Brice's success is all the more impressive because of that. She became the most revered comedian in the United States and beyond. She conquered the stage and the radio, and to some extent film and television. All the while, Fanny was dealing with tremendous personal tragedy and betrayal and raising 2 children as a single mother. Perhaps that's why she was so successful on stage. She channeled that heartache into absurdity and made America laugh. She played clowns, vamps, opera singers, ballerinas, and even babies. She should be as well known and revered as Lucille Ball and Carol Burnett.
Yeah.
If not more so, because without Fanny Brice, these women may not have been able to achieve what they did. So I'm going to leave you with Fanny's words. I made most things happen for me. And if they were good, I worked to get them. If they were bad, I worked just as hard for that. But I am not sorry. I will tell anybody that, and it is the truth. I lived the way I wanted to live and never did what people said I should do or advised me to do.
That's great.
That's the story of Fanny Brice.
I wonder if she fell through the gaps just because of the transition of technology right at the time that she died.
I was wondering that too. But it was like the most popular radio show.
I don't know. Like a new generation comes in that starts off with television, doesn't start with radio. You lose all of that history.
But you know who Bob Hope is.
Yeah.
She did stuff with Bob Hope.
Oh, geez.
We know who Scott Jolson is.
Yeah.
He was the first man to star in a movie that had sound. She was the first woman. That's why I find it really weird. It's like, I would think, okay, well, it's because of that, like that transition in time. But like,
wait.
What else?
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually think it has something to do with her looks.
Really?
I do. Because she wasn't a beauty. And I think we don't hold women who are not beautiful to the same pedestal, even if they're very successful at what they do.
Yeah. Don't keep them on the platform.
I also think after having seen, you've now seen a couple photos of her.
Mm-hmm.
I also think Barbra Streisand was not the right person to play her necessarily.
Probably not.
I actually think Carol Burnett would have been a better choice, but Carol Burnett's not Jewish.
Yeah.
But I think Carol Burnett actually really, like Carol Burnett was floated around as someone to play her. And what's really weird is the family really wanted Anne Bancroft to play her.
Really?
And I was like, no. What? Anne Bancroft? No, that doesn't fit at all. She's, when I tell you, she is an awkward looking motherfucker. Like Carol Burnett could have done those crazy, you know, Carol could really pull her face.
Oh, yeah.
And
she was tall.
Really tall and gangly.
Thin.
Like, to me, that would have been just the perfect person. And she could sing.
Yeah, true.
She really was a full package. And she would have looked the part, and I think really would have captured the part. Mm-hmm. But I also understand, like, they really wanted a Jewish person. Mm-hmm. That was a part of her comedy, and it would have felt real weird to have Carol Burnett doing Jewish ethnic comedy.
True.
So I did read a very terrible biography that I hated called Fanny Brice, the Original Funny Girl by Herbert G. Goldman. I also loved this profile on the Jewish Women's Archive by Barbara Wallace Grossman about Fanny Brice. Her New York Times obit from 1951. A review of the original Broadway Funny Girl by Howard Taubman for New York Times. And then, of course, I used some clips off of YouTube of the Baby Snooks show and her singing My Man.
Fantastic.
Thanks.
And do you want to explain why the biography was horrible?
Oh my God, this man. First off, I just don't think men should be allowed to write biographies about women. They're just... He hated Barbra Streisand. So like the entire last chapter was about how much Barbra Streisand sucks. And how she's like self-centered, self-obsessed.
Seems like he just like wrote a book to like complain about women he doesn't like.
He also like, I think part of it that I really struggled with was like he told every single part of every play she ever fucking did. I was like, dude, we don't need it to be that detailed. Like,
yeah, I don't need a play-by-play.
You can summarize a little bit of this stuff. And he made this comment in on one page where it was like talking about how when she was on tour, she would send like little gifts home to the kids if they weren't with her. And so he was like talking about how like, you know, she was in Detroit and Chicago and Cincinnati and Cleveland. And then he was like, not the dregs, derelict places they are now. These were once shiny cities. And I was like, oh, okay.
Getting a broader picture of your...
And the book was written in 92. Mm-hmm. So it gives you a real clear idea of what he means when he's talking about those cities being not great places.
Yeah.
It was certainly racist. Those are cities that have large black populations. And were at the time having there was like the whole like war on drugs and crime and whatever, welfare queens, that whole thing.
Yeah.
That's what was going on in society at the time. So it's very clearly, to me, a racist comment about these cities being run down. Anyway, I don't recommend the book.
There you go.
I haven't watched Funny Lady yet. I wanted to do it before we recorded, but I haven't had a chance to. I did, however, listen to Barbra Streisand's version of My Man.
What'd you think?
Not as good as Fanny Brice's, I'll tell you that. At least not the feeling. Like,
Yeah.
It didn't have the
weight, probably, of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, anyway.
This is really cool because I love women in comedy.
Same.
I do. Like, they bring a whole new flavor to things. And the women in comedy now are changing so much.
Yes.
Yeah. And really starting to demand the respect that they should have been getting, especially Fanny.
Yeah, I agree. I would say Fanny Brice is one of those people that's a complicated character, right? She's not all good. She's not all bad. You know, she definitely, played with stereotypes and racist shit. She gave zero fucks about like supporting unions. She also wanted to stay out of politics, quote unquote, and like just didn't really help during like World War II and like the 30s and stuff when anti-Semitism was really bad. I mean, there's like complicated things about her. She wouldn't be like, again, an all good person, but she did make an indelible mark on comedy and forever change the landscape of who could be considered a great comedian. And I love her for that.
Yep. That's great.
Well, thank you everyone for listening. Thanks also to Lucas.
Thank you, Lucas. And also thank you to Jennifer Finch for providing our awesome theme music.
And thank you everybody for sticking with us and for supporting us on Patreon. And you can also purchase stuff from us on TeePublic. And Patreon subscribers, you'll be getting gifts from us soon.
Yep, they are in packages. They are labeled.
Yep,
we are on our way to send them.
And if you would like to be a Patreon subscriber, remember you can go to patreon.com/IDKHerPodcast.
All right, folks. Till next time.
Goodbye.